Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Autodesk Virtual Academy, brought to you by KETIV Technologies. I wish I had a jingle to play during this. Maybe that's something we'll work on here next.
That'd make it way better.
That'd be so cool. I'm Nigel Mbayek, Application Engineer and Customer Success Manager here at KETIV Technologies. I'm also happen to be the host for just about every AVA session in recent existence. But today I'm joined by Eric Paul.
Good morning, everyone.
Eric Paul's one of our application engineers, and Eric works almost exclusively on
automation and integration mostly.
Yep, automation and integration projects, whether that's Inventor to Vault, Fusion Lifecycle, other fancy stuff. Eric's probably worked on it if one of those projects has come out of KETIV. So Eric's a great resource to have for us today. And in addition, right, even though his name's not here on the screen, we got a special guest here, Kyle Gillum from Autodesk. Good morning, Kyle. How's it going?
Morning. How you all doing?
Good. Kyle works on the Autodesk Inventor team, and he's got some really awesome stuff to share later in the webinar today about some events that Autodesk is hosting in regards to future Inventor builds, and figured, hey, you know, there's no better day than today to be able to share some of this, especially with some of those events coming up here in the next few months. So, stay tuned to see that a little bit after Eric completes the actual live demo here. So with that, I think we can get started. Eric's going to go over, building assemblies from Excel sheet in Inventor. Yes. That's something that Eric's been doing for some of our customers, and we feel that it's really important from people from an automation perspective to be able to understand how to do this, because a lot of our customers do have their stuff logged in Excel, and to be able to port that over to something simple as an Inventor assembly to get rid of, say, 50% of the beginning work, or maybe more, is super, super valuable. So we'll start with that. And if anyone has any questions, go ahead and type those into the questions bar. I know there are two. There's one for chat, one for questions. Feel free to send questions to the questions bar and any chat things if you want to say hi to us in the chat bar. So with that, Eric, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Yeah, so as Nigel mentioned, really this is using, this technique is helpful for when you have a product line where, you have a lot of similar base components, and, after you create that base, you make some small tweaks off that. This can really help jumpstart your progress. The other really interesting thing you can do with creating this from Excel is, some of our customers, well, all their data is already in Excel, so this can help be that bridge. The other thing is, if you don't have a whole lot of, programmers on your team, mostly designers, basically everyone can use Excel. And if you need to make an edit to how a base model should be created, you don't have to go back into the iLogic that, said, oh, put this part in if it's this type of model. You can do that straight in the Excel sheet. And whoever makes that edit can affect everyone. So let me quickly go over what we'll be covering. We're going to go over some of the special Excel commands in iLogic. We're going to show you how to replace components. We'll use a form to run all the commands that we're using today. And at the end, I'll show you an alternate way that we can set parameter values, and we'll be setting parameter values from Excel as well. All right, so let me go ahead and jump in here. So here we have our most amazing assembly. We've got a base part, we have an attachment, and we have an accessory. Now, we've built this model before, so we have something to go off of. And, let's say our design always has this base, attachment, and accessory as part of it. And, maybe just you switch out some of these components for your different model types. So that's really the first thing we have to do here, is we have to set up a kind of template assembly. So that's the part that I've already done that we'll kind of gloss over and move straight into, how we actually change this up. So the first thing I'll do here, let me go ahead and open up Excel. We'll go ahead and make a new Excel sheet here. And what's going to be important is in this Excel sheet that we're going to make, we're going to have some matching features. So for instance, we'll need to know beforehand what the model numbers are going to be. And so that's going to be our first column here, model numbers. Actually, let me take off the S, model number. And let's say we'll start off easy. We'll just replace the base components. So notice this base, that's going to have to match exactly the name of this component here, base. This model number, that's something that we don't have yet here. So what we're going to do is we're going to add that as a user parameter. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the parameters, and I already have set up this model number parameter. And in it, I have on the other screen, we've got 39 and we have 5. Those are our first two models that we know of that we'll be adding here. So if I switch back, we know we're dealing with model 39 and model, let's start with 5. That makes a little bit more sense. And 39. All right. And let me go ahead and check out our design area. And I'm going to look for the files that we're going to be using as the base. All right. And so this case, I know that Latveria is our first base, and our second base is going to be Stark Tower. So we're just going to put those in as we see them. Latveria. Oh, you know what? I'm going to be a little bit smarter about this. I'm not going to make typos. We're going to copy. We're going to paste. There we go. Now notice that I'm also adding in the .ipt. That's going to be important. Make sure you add that. And let me copy this one.
Yeah, if anyone notices, Eric has secretly created some sort of Marvel Comics assembly here.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know either.
All right. Let's go ahead and save this. And we're going to save it into here. And we're going to call it our 616 models. And I've got backups for all this because with programming, you never know what's going to happen when you do it live.
Yeah, save frequently and have backups.
Yes. All right. So now we have this Excel sheet. We have our starting information. We have our model number with a base. We've got 2 of these, and that is all set. We also have our parameter, the user parameter in here, where we'll be setting which model number we want to look at. All right. So next thing we're going to want to do is figure out a little bit from the Inventor API. We got to get a little bit of information here. So I'm going to bring up in the Inventor Help, there is this wonderful section. I know when you think of help on a program, you don't much of it, but this Inventor API Help, fantastic. So one of the ways you can get at it is up at the help menu here, the programming and API help. That'll bring up a kind of in program help window that you can search through. It's also available on the web, and that's how I'll be looking at it here. So we know from our Inventor experience that assemblies have these occurrences, and there are these component occurrences. And so we have to figure out, okay, well, how does the API deal with this? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at the Inventor object model, the Inventor API object model. Again, this is something you can do a quick search for on the web. Autodesk has this hosted up. And we're not in a part, you know, taking a quick look at what's in the Inventor API here. We have parts, as we can see in the green. We have assemblies in blue and drawings in yellow. You know, those are the main components of what makes up Inventor objects. And we know that we need to go after a component occurrence. So we're going to search down here and alphabetically, we're going to see, okay, component occurrence. So now we know exactly what to call it. You know, it's component occurrence, no spaces. And what we can do is now go to the help and we can look up component occurrence. And now we can get this really detailed description of what is a component occurrence. And this is going to help us figure out how we're going to read information, write information, and really understand you know, what's possible and what we're going to need to change here. So the main thing that we're going to need to figure out first is, okay, I have all these occurrences in my assembly. I need to figure out the name of it, because when it's base, I need to, you know, change that based off of what the Excel sheet shows. So I'm going to go ahead and now start the new rule, which I will call component replace. And the very first thing I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to get the assembly document. Again, real quick, if I go back to the Inventor API, you know, this is the root of where I have to start. I have to go from the assembly document to the component definition, and then to the component occurrences. That's the collection of all the component occurrences. And then I can get my individual component occurrence, right? So that's what I'll do right now, is I'll just walk through picking up all those objects. So let me go ahead and start this. I'm going to make my first variable, and it's going to be an assembly document. And we're going to make it this doc. And, you know, depending on which version of Inventor you're using, I believe it's after 2018.2. There's some IntelliSense. That's what Microsoft calls it with this code. You know, it understands some of the objects here. And for instance, when you put this dot, it's going to give you all the options you have. So in this case, we're going to want to get the document. All right, next up, we know we have to get the component definition. And so that's going to be an assembly component definition. And we're going to grab that from the previous object here. So that's assembly doc. And then we're going to get the component definition. Perfect. All right. And next, we have to collect all of the occurrences. Component occurrences. And that's going to be coming off of this. And notice it added it in. It knows it's a variable to look at now. And we're going to get all of the occurrences. And remember, each of these names, these were shown in the API object model. That's how I know what to grab. Okay, so now we've collected all the occurrences. And one more thing before I, get on with the rest of the code, I'm going to say where my Excel file location is going to be. And that's going to be as a string. And I'm going to copy it over from what I already have. I know it's at this location, right? Let's just double check. There it is, 616 models. All right. So next thing I'm going to show is some of these Excel specific commands in iLogic. So if you go over here on the left, you can see this Excel data link section. And when you open that up, you can see a couple of different options here. We've got find row, we've got current row value, cell values, multi-value lists. You know, there's lots of different things we can do here. In this case, we're just going to be reading data. So I'm just going to deal with find row. And as I mouse over this, you can kind of see here what it's expecting. I'm going to go ahead and double click it. So it'll put all this out for me. And as we read through this, what it's saying is, you know, in order to use this find row command, we're going to need the name of the file. So in this case, I'll replace file name with the one we typed up above. It needs to know what sheet it's on. If I go back to my Excel, we can see, yep, we're on sheet 1. And then we have to figure out what column name we're going to start in, right? So this find row command, first we have to start with the column name, and then when, you know, the value equals something, well, we've collected that row. So in this case, the column name is base. Sorry, not base. We want to go off of model number, because that's how we're going to figure out what the rest of the data is. So we're going to go for, back up here, model number. And there's a couple of different options here. You know, you can say less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, equal to. In this case, we just want equal to. And what do we want it to equal? We want it to equal the user parameter we made earlier, this model number. All right. And as you can see in the example that it spit out, you know, we can find this particular row even using 2 different options. So maybe you have, you know, base model and a submodel, and then more information based off of that. You can find it by 2 columns as well. All right, and I don't like it when they use I. I usually just put in work. Usually I use I for loops. Okay, so now we have this information. You know, we've collected the occurrences, and we're using this go Excel find row command to find, okay, when our model number, let's say it's 5, when our model number 5 is found, we're going to collect that data and we're going to read from the different columns later on. So before we get there, we have to get a little bit more information from Inventor. So we're going to have to cycle through all these component occurrences, and now that we've collected the row, you know, we got to make sure that we're matching for that to go on. So let me go ahead and start our loop. So we're going to say for each, and in this case, we're going to loop through each occurrence. This is as a component occurrence in, and then it's this all occurrences group. And then we're going to finish this before we put anything in there. Okay, so this is going to loop through each occurrence that we find in here. And so it'll pick up base, main attachment, accessory. And what we're going to try to do is, let's see, let me grab a new piece of information here. We're going to say, we're going to use this current row value. All right. That's going to be the right-hand side of our equation. We're going to say go Excel current row value. And in this case, we want to grab the name of the occurrence. All right. So we need to figure out, okay, what exactly do we call out when we want the name for the occurrence? So I'm going to go back to the component occurrence properties, and I'm going to take a quick search here. I'm going to say, hey, is there anything related to name, right? So we've got foreign file name. No, that's not us. Name. Okay, so this is the human readable name of the component occurrence. What this really means is this is the displayed name here. So I'm going to go ahead and instead of knowing what the column name is beforehand, I'm going to say it's the occurrence dot name. There, I found it. And what am I going to call this? What am I going to do with it? I'm going to put it in a variable here, and I'm going to call it the replacement model name. And before we continue on, we want to, let's see here. Do I need this? Just in case something goes wrong and it doesn't pick up everything as expected. So let's say we're trying to, pick up main attachment, right? Because it's going to go through each of these. So the first one is going to go is base, and then it's going to go to main attachment and to accessory. It's going to try to find that in the Excel sheet. But if it's not there, it's going to throw an error. So we've got to put this whole section in its own little error catching. So to do that, we're going to put it in a try section. So we're going to do a try that. If that doesn't work, we're going to catch that and end the try. This is a VB function. Go check out that. Do a search for the vb.net try. You can get a little bit more information on how exactly this works. So if it doesn't find the component name here in the Excel sheet, I want it to just stop and continue on and try to look at the next one. So we're going to use a command called continue for. So this will stop going down the code here, and it's going to just run the next loop. Okay, so at this point, we are looking at the occurrence, and based off of its name, we're going to try to find it in Excel. And if we do find it, now we know that we're going to try to replace it. And again, we're going to put a little error catching around this in case something goes wrong. Maybe the file's not found. There's a lot of stuff that could go on there. So we're going to put this whole thing in a try catch as well. All right. So the next thing we're going to use is an iLogic function called the component replace. And so if I go here to components, you can see this replace command. Let's go ahead and set it out here. And as you can see by the wording here that it's expecting a component name to start, then the file name, including, you see the .ipt that it's supposed to replace it with, and then whether or not we want to replace all the versions that we find in here with that. So now we're going to add our own information here. And in this case, again, it's going to be occurrence name. So we're saying we want to replace base with replacement model name, right? And that's what we're grabbing from the Excel here. So we're saying for base, say they're matching up, we want to replace it now with whatever's here for model number 5, or whatever is here for model number 39, depending on what we're choosing, right? So there we go. That's all we have to do. Now we're going to be reading that in and replacing it. So let me go ahead and save this. I'll close this. Let me, I don't think I need to close out of the Excel. That should work fine. And let's go ahead and make some changes now. Instead of model number 5, let's change this to 39. And you can see immediately it changes that base to be this new part. If I, let me close this, if I right click on this and check the properties, you can see it's now pulling the Stark Tower part. Now, I didn't like how this fired off as soon as I changed the parameter. So I'm going to go ahead and suppress this rule. I'm just going to run it manually anytime I want to make the change. While I'm getting the program started, it can be a little bit frustrating if it's always regenerating in the background. So I'm going to go ahead and switch that back, run the rule again, and there we go, back to the original part. Okay, so we dealt with the base, but you know, there's more to do. Let's go ahead and add accessories to this, all right? So let's go back to the Excel sheet. Okay, we are going to go for accessory now. And in this case, I know that the accessories are going to be, let's find them here. The Hulkbuster. And notice that this is an assembly, not a part. And let's just say we've got, what's our other one? Bleeding Edge. That's our other accessory. All right. So we'll go ahead and save this. And now that we've added in this accessory column, we're going to make absolutely no changes to the code because it's already looking through everything. We're going to run this code, and now this accessory should change based off of our input here. So let me just double check that I saved this. All right. And let's go ahead and run component replace. All right, we're still on 5. 39. And let's run it again. And there we go. Now both the accessory and the base have changed. All right. And so to, you know, build on that even further, and as we're kind of getting tired of clicking this run rule every time, let's go ahead and build a form for this, all right? So let's build a new form, and we're going to call this the regenerate assembly form. And we're going to bring in one piece of information, just the model number. That's what we want to input. And we want to bring in this rule, component replace. That's what we want to run. All right, so we'll go ahead and click OK. We click our form. And now we can say, hey, I want to go 5. I want to go 39. There we go. Way easier. All right. And this is all that gets prepared for a brand new part. So, you know, your development team has come up with a new part to add to this. And all you have to do is add this to the Excel sheet. So our next one is going to be model number 83. And let's copy paste this data. So the new base is Asgard. And the accessory, I know it's Bleeding Edge. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and bring in this main attachment as well. So we're going to bring in main attachment. And let's see here, the normal ones are, copy them out. So we've got Stormbreaker as our standard attachments. And we've got the new Gunrear as the new main attachment for Asgard. All right, go ahead and save this. And so right now, in here, we're only dealing with model number 5 and 39. So I'm going to go ahead and add 83 to this list. Okay, we're going to use this form again, use 83, component replace, and we've got all brand new parts. Here we've got our new Asgard base, we have our new Gungnir main attachment, and our other accessory. And again, we did not change the code. All we had to do was change the Excel sheets. That's one of the huge benefits out of that. Okay, so that is the component replacement. Let me quickly move over to parameters. So we can use a very similar setup for parameters. So just like we looked through all the different components that were part of this assembly, we're going to take a quick look at the API model, and we're going to say, okay, where are parameters? Parameters. Okay, sees that parameters are in that same section as the component occurrences. So we're going to make a new rule. We're going to pick up these parameters, and looking at the parameter section here, you know, all we have to do is look up parameters, then we'll cycle through each parameter, and we'll be able to pull the information or push it that way. So go ahead and make a new rule, and this one we'll call parameter replace. And I'm going to cheat a little bit. We already know that we want the active document, component definition, and parameters, and specifically user parameters. So I can just chain this. So in our last one, you know, we built it piece by piece. In this case, you can just chain the whole thing, and we can go straight to user parameters. Very quickly, instead of building it out, I am going to change the backup here to be the main. And in order for it to have something to actually affect, I've made this hole here, and this hole was built with a couple of parameters. So as you can see here, the diameter of the hole, I've made this parameter hole size, and the, what was the other one I made? I've got hole size and hole height. So the way it's placed on here, here on the sketch, you can see the placement from the origin. That's made using hole height, right? So we're going to affect one parameter in the sketch and one that's on this feature. So let me go ahead and open this up for you guys real quick. And it's on my other page. Okay, and you can see I did the exact same setup here, all right? So it always starts with this model number, because that's how we're going to narrow it down. And then I have the parameter names here, hole height and hole size, and then their values underneath. Okay, so I've got this Excel set up. Now what I'm going to need to do is loop through the parameters, find out when they match up one of these names, grab the value, and push it back. So let me go ahead and start writing that out. Okay, so again, we're going to set up the file location, and we're going to use the same Excel function here, and we're going to say find row, right? So that's going to set that up for us. And I'm going to cheat a little bit here for the sake of time. We're going to add in, again, the Excel file location. We're starting on sheet 1. And when model number is equal to model number, we'll know we find the right row. So now we're going to have to loop through each of the parameters, right? The ones that we picked up here. Let me finish off. And again, we're going to have to put this in a try catch because there might be stuff that's not in the Excel sheet. Did I type right in there? Perfect. Okay. And again, we're going to use the current value, current row value. And when the current row value of the parameter, and we're going to do our investigating in here instead. We're going to say, oh, it doesn't know what it is, but it's dot name. If I do as parameter, let's see if that does it for us. Nope. All right. Run out of time, so I will skip that for now. But I know its name. I looked it up in the API. And now we have to have this equal to something, right? And so what's actually kind of cool is you can call out this parameter instead of just writing the name of the user parameter like we've done here and you've probably done in the past. There's actually the special way you can call it out using a string name. So if you know it's called something or other, in this case, you know, it's whatever the name of the parameter is, you can just set it. You can say, hey, when you find this in the Excel sheet, write it, make that value of the parameter equal to that. All right. And that's really all it is. So we're going to head and save it and run it. And right, we still have to update. So let's go ahead and combine this all into one. Let's add a new rule that's just build. And we're going to use some of our special features here. Run rule. We're going to run two different rules here. The first one is called component replace, as we see over on the side. The second one is parameter replace. And then at the very end of this, we want to update
the model.
And can't find it immediately over here, but it's in here. The update when done. Go ahead and save this, close this. We're going to suppress everything. And we're going to change our form. Go ahead and edit this so that instead of the component replace rule being run, let's get rid of that. We are now going to run the build rule. So that'll run both of the component replace and the parameter replace and then update the model. And here we go. All right, so we're on 83, change to 39, change to 5, and you can see the whole changed, and it's all changing super fast. There you go. That's what we got. Hopefully, you guys can see how this is used and you know, see some of the benefits of it. You know, you don't have to go in and change the code. That's a really big one, depending on, you know, your company makeup.
Absolutely, and you can only imagine this getting more and more useful. The larger and larger your assemblies get, the more and more unique, I guess, or configurations your assembly has.
Yeah. Or maybe you churn out, you know, 3 different new models, you know, a month.
Yep.
And it's like, who goes in there and changes the code for each of that? It's like, oh, that's
absolutely.
It's rough.
Yeah. All right. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into questions. If anyone has any questions, go ahead and type them now. But before we do that, Eric, if you want to jump into the PowerPoint real quick.
Yes.
And we'll go ahead and pass it on to Kyle. We didn't forget you're there, Kyle. Kyle's got a couple of announcements to make. Kyle, you still there?
Yep, still here. Yeah. So I wanted to thank you guys for having me on. You know, the Inventor team's always looking at improving, getting better, and getting your feedback. So one of the things we were talking about and wanting to let you know about is coming up in Portland. In September, we're going to have a gunslinger. So I know KETIV is pretty heavy here in Portland. So if you are in the Portland area, or if you want to come up to Portland, it's going to be September 24th and 25th at our new office. We're going to have this used to be called the gunslinger, now it's called ITFs. We're going to be looking into a couple of the new features that we're working on right now. I can't get into a ton of detail because you'll need to sign NDAs before we show you a bunch of stuff, but it has to do with kind of Inventor and Revit and how they work together, and then some stuff we're doing with model states, I'll say. So if you want to know more information about that, you can go ahead and sign up to our beta and talk more about it. But if you're interested in kind of talking to the product team, letting us know what you think about what we're doing, and maybe kind of helping shape the direction of Inventor in the future, that is a great way to participate. Also, we're working really tightly with KETIV in a new kind of pilot that we're working on, and KETIV actually has a link where you can sign in through their link into the beta, and it lets them know kind of that you're in the beta. If you're doing a bunch of stuff, they can know about kind of the areas that you're interested in and follow up with you. So they have that link. I think they're going to put in the chat as well. So if you're already in the beta, use that link as well, so we know that you're with KETIV and can kind of help them address some of your issues as well. So yeah, and we're looking at maybe doing an event down in Southern California as well at the KETIV facilities. That date is TBD for now, but looking forward to kind of meeting with you guys, getting your feedback, letting us know what you like and don't like about kind of what we're working on, and yeah, hearing from you guys. So if anyone has any questions for that, let me know, and there should be a link. Yeah, he sent a link. This is a way to sign up for that PDX event in the chat window. So if you're interested at all, I can't guarantee you spots because there's only 20 available, but you can go ahead and sign up, and we can contact you through that.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Kyle. And then also, if you're not already signed up for the Inventor Beta program and want to learn more about what Kyle and the rest of the team over there at Autodesk are working on, and really want feedback on, right? They really want to tailor the builds to the needs of the actual user base. Go ahead, and I'm putting another link in here as well. And that's to join the actual beta community. I know that Kyle is always happy when we send people his way to get feedback. So if you are interested, go ahead and click through there. And you can see some of the really awesome stuff that we're not allowed to talk about online here. But if you're in there, I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you or get you connected to people like Kyle and at Autodesk so you can give your feedback to them about how you want the product to evolve into the future. And I know for every build, Kyle, you guys work on dozens, if not hundreds of things that are requested by customers themselves. So really excited to see where the tool moves in the next year or two.
And again, this is two separate, the inside the factory, that's going to be hands-on in person. And this new link that Nigel gave, you can do this, you can install it on your own computer. You can use it through a browser. Once you sign up for that beta, you can test it on your own.
Yep. Cool. Awesome. Thanks again, Kyle, for that.
Thank you, guys.
If anyone has any questions about this, let us know. We can go ahead and forward those over to Kyle. But now we'll go ahead and start addressing some of the questions we had from today's AVA. Let's take a look here. This is a great question from Josh. How are these parts constrained when the macro replaces the parts?
Right? All right. So let me go ahead and show you. I did some real basic constraints beforehand. So for instance, this base, I've basically set up as much as I can from the origin planes to other origin planes. And the base isn't actually a good one to look at. Let's look at the main attachment, right? So I've got, the different origin planes attached, and then it was built a little funny, so I had to, boost it off a little bit. But all of those constraints, assuming it's a similar model,
similar geometry,
it's going to keep those restraints. Now, if it's not similar geometry, what you can start doing is using some work planes, and then use work planes and origin planes and make your constraints through there.
Or points, you can do that too.
Yeah.
So yeah, so essentially the assembly was built by Eric, like as if you were building a one-off of this assembly, but in a way where if the geometry changed, like if you change the geometry on any assembly right now, like if he edited one of these extrudes, it would just move the attaching parts because of how it was constrained, right? It's face to face or edge to edge. And if the edge is still there, it'll move along the same edge. If the face is there, it'll move with the same face. So if the parts and assemblies that you're building are similar enough in geometry where the same faces and edges and stuff exist, if you constrain to that, it'll just update to that. If it's more complicated, you're going to have to use more advanced techniques, I would say.
Yeah. Another thing you can do is, only make the constraints between origins and then bring in work planes and then bring in parameters that set where those work planes go.
Absolutely. And people are asking for copies of this.
Yes.
It's pretty simple.
So there's a couple different options here. If you want to just take a look on YouTube afterwards, you can pause it. Otherwise, if you just want to send us an email, we can. I've got this all the code in there as a text file, and I can just send that out to you.
Yeah, you're gonna have to replace stuff with the stuff that you've got, but yeah, that's pretty simple enough where we can send it over.
Yep. So send it to questions@ketiv.com, and I will pick that up.
Yep. Do the base and accessory components need to be in the same directory as the assembly, or can you put a file location in the spreadsheet as well?
You can put a file location in the spreadsheet. Yes. Right now, the way I did it was just abusing the project file, and it knew to look in the project file.
Yeah. So yeah, because it's the project file controls where the workspace is, and all the files for this assembly exist below this location. Just look everywhere for it.
Yeah, but you can absolutely set it to be like a very specific location.
Yeah, if it's outside of your project too, that might be a thing.
Yeah. The very first question I saw in there, Nigel.
Where are we?
At the very top. So the question came in, you don't need to open the Excel file before you use find row.
I just need to know where it is.
And so, no, you don't need to explicitly open it as a separate item. Part of this find row command opens up Excel. So you just need to do the find row.
Let's see. The Excel doesn't work if the sheet, parentheses, I guess their name, is not in the first tab. Do you know that?
My understanding was that it's going to look for the sheet name. I didn't think it was just the first sheet, but I haven't tested that. I can test that out and let you know. Actually, let's just test it while you get the next question.
Just change the name to sheet 2.
Yeah, I'm going to make another one. So
it's going to look for that unique name. All right, Eric will work on that while I continue to answer questions. Let's see here. Can iLogic / Inventor search for the Excel file within the same directory as the assembly as opposed to giving a specific location? I think you have to give it a specific location.
Sorry, what was that again?
Can it search for Excel file in the same directory as opposed to giving a actual Excel location?
Oh, no, you're going to have to know the location.
Yeah, because you have to give the actual file name.
Yeah, and really, a pretty good workflow for this would be, you have this Excel file in Vault, so it's locked down, and, usually under pretty heavy restrictions that, you really got to make sure that you're allowed to make changes.
Absolutely. And if you enforce the same working folder location,
yes,
the Excel spreadsheet's going to be in the same place every time.
Yep, for everybody. So that's really your best case scenario. And to go back to our last one, it does look at sheet name. So you can see I made it sheet 2. It's on the second sheet, and it's picking up everything as expected.
Yeah, so it just needs to understand exactly what the name of the sheet is. So make sure that instead of just sheet 1, it's not looking for the first sheet there. It's looking for a sheet specifically called sheet 1. It could be like the 17th sheet in the book, in the workbook. It's just looking for that exact one. So let's see. let's see. Sorry, I can't pronounce your name. Jarl? That would be that's in the first half of the webinar to get the base to change with the different IPT files. So once that recording is up on our YouTube channel, go ahead and check it out. And you'll see how Eric is changing the actual reference part name for that base. If you take one thing away from this, and I say this for every single automation webinar we do, parametrize your stuff.
Yes, please.
Please parametrize your stuff. And Eric, can you just open up parameters for me? And this is something that a lot of people understand and a lot of people sometimes look over. And oftentimes when, you know, even when I started modeling too, it was like, I can make 3D models, it's fine. But I never actually named this stuff. So every time you create geometry in the model, you get information for all of the model parameters, D0, D1, D2. And you might be wondering what that is. Essentially, those are the parameters that are controlling the actual information in your model. If you are planning on automating stuff,
Even if you're not.
and even if you're not, yeah, that's true. But especially if you're planning on automating stuff and you need to manipulate any of those, you're going to want to name them something specific. And this might not be a really good example because Eric didn't need to edit a lot of that geometry. He used user parameters instead for some of it. Well, even then, right, whole height and whole size are D18 and D19. So,
Yeah, so it's consumed by,
right.
and so now this D18 that got created when I made this hole uses this whole height value.
Yep, and you're going to want to do that because you don't want to have your code include a bunch of D0s, D17s, D18s because you have no idea
Yeah, and you'll make
what you're
everyone
controlling.
sad.
Yeah, and then when someone else opens it, it's really, 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 really sad.
Quick note while we're on here, notice that these are in unit of inches, but in the Excel file, we did not have to put inches. They were just the straight values.
Absolutely. Will this work with Vault? Absolutely.
In fact, this is one of the nice things. Instead of doing something like an iPart or iAssembly, which can have issues with Vault.
Have issues with, yeah, it's potential. There's potential there.
This is a great way to do it. You can do a copy design on the initial assembly, to get you started.
Yeah.
There's lots of stuff you can do to, all this code stays with a copy design.
Absolutely.
All these parameters stay with the copy design.
Yep. And if you're building this, you're going to want to do a get of all of the models. If you have this stuff in Vault and you have all your models in Vault. So just do a get of everything. And then you can build your assemblies that way. And this is kind of like really basic. I wish I could show you some of the other crazy stuff that Eric works on, where the assembly gets built from like blank.
Oh, yeah.
This is one of those things where you already have an existing assembly and you're just manipulating components, changing them. If you go even further than this, you don't even have to start with an assembly.
Yeah.
Technically in the foreground.
Yeah, you make an assembly, you place things, you put them in specific areas, you add constraints.
Yeah, we can't go over that in an hour or like 30 minutes even. There's absolutely no chance. But if there's something you're really interested in and want to look at, let someone here know at KETIV, and we can certainly have that conversation with you.
Yep. And a quick plug, if you're interested at all in iLogic, do take a look at the tutorial gallery. There is an iLogic option in here, and it's actually pretty good. Yep,
and if you're a Streamline customer, Eric has taught a couple of Streamline productivity training classes, so if you have Streamline, you can watch those classes. So keep that in mind. And then I'll answer a couple more questions here before we let everybody go. Can this be done with drawings? More specifically, will the assembly update to show changes?
Yes.
Drawing. Yeah.
So if we make a drawing off of this and we make all the changes here, yeah, that'll be updated.
Absolutely. So in that case, right, you would want to make the assembly or the assembly view in your drawing associative to the assembly itself, or else you just want to update.
It has to be.
Yeah, which I guess, yeah, it makes sense. So just keep that in mind as well.
I don't actually.
And then last question, Eric. Last one. How do I read thread designation from an Excel sheet using iLogic? What are you trying to do? Is the, I guess, bigger question.
My guess is this is for bolts. And
yeah, I'm assuming so. There's different ways to do that, I think, based on how I'm interpreting the question.
Yeah.
So if you have further questions about thread designation and how to read some of that stuff. You might actually want to use Content Center for that,
And then
which is like a good use for iParts.
yeah, that's true.
Go ahead and expand on that question. Send us an email, and we can talk you through what you're trying to go through as well. And that question wasn't even like, I didn't really get to answer a question there. So I'll do one more.
Yes.
How do you deal with this, using this as a template and using things like copy design when the address of the Excel sheet is a specific user?
Yeah. So kind of, going back to the Vault thing, that's really a pretty good option. If you're not using Vault, maybe use a network location and set the file to read only.
Yeah.
So that you're all looking for the same thing.
Absolutely.
That's really your best bet.
Yeah, that's probably what you want to end up doing for that. I mean, technically you could edit the string with variables and stuff, but
you can, but that's not ideal.
Yeah, you don't want to drop down. It's like, who is this? Eric? Is this Nigel? Who is this?
That's actually, not great, but that's another option too. If you really are that siloed in your different spots, and an individual user is always going to look for it in a specific place, you can do that.
Yeah, as long as everything is the same in everyone's directory except for like maybe one or two things, and I guess you could pick those from a drop down. But I wouldn't do it that way.
Yeah. I see one last question here from Henrik. Can you use an XLSM file for this? Yes, I believe you can.
Yeah, and you can use CSV, I think, too. It's a little different, I think.
I don't remember if you can do it using the iLogic.
I don't think
Excel
you use the
stuff.
iLogic Excel stuff, but it's some other stuff. Cool. I think that's everything. Again, Eric, thanks for showing up today. Thanks everybody for showing up today. The last thing I'm going to do before I sign off is I'm going to put the links again in here. This first link is for the beta program, to join the beta program, and the second one is for the event in Portland. And for those of you who are in Portland, you might get a email or something from one of us here at KETIV about going to said event. So those are in there. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. Thanks again, Kyle. I don't know if you're still there in the background. I see you are. Thanks again for sharing that with us this morning.
Yep, thank you.
And thanks again, everybody, for joining us every week for AVA. If it wasn't for people joining, I wouldn't be here every Thursday doing these. I'm not going to broadcast to an empty room. So with that, thanks again, everybody. We'll talk to you all soon. We'll see you here again next week at 10 a.m. on Thursday. Bye-bye, everyone.